Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the US Debt Clock series, where we focus on how reckless government overspending impacts you and your financial future. Today we're going to be focused on what the trajectory looks like if nothing were to change. But before we look at the future, let's make sure we understand today. Now, you can look at the national debt and picture it like a credit card with a bill that has grown out of control. The higher and higher it gets, the harder and harder it is to dig out of those consequences because we know that the interest on the debt continues to rise with it. So if we look here, we're going to see the largest budget items that we are currently spending our funds on as a nation. Some of them are exactly what you'd expect. We have Medicare, Medicaid, we have Social Security, and we have defense. But right here, number 4, we have interest on debt, which has actually surpassed how much we're spending annually on our entire defense. Think about that for a second. We are spending close to $1 trillion just on the interest on our debt. That is $1 trillion that could be spent on infrastructure, on schools, on healthcare, on so many things, on childcare, on whatever you name it, that American citizens are screaming that they need support on. And instead, it's going just towards paying off this mountain of debt. Nothing to show for it. Aside from making my blood boil, how does this actually impact you? Well, let's break it down together. The U.S. federal debt-to-GDP ratio, which we see today is at 123%, is a critical indicator of trouble ahead. Because when debt becomes unsustainable, we have a problem where there is no longer productive growth. None of the spending is really actually supporting people. Instead, it's just going towards financing this debt, and it becomes harder and harder to dig yourself out of the hole. So you end up having a situation where more cash is printed and more taxes are put on the people, making an undue burden on you and me and everyone else who never asked to be in this situation. Especially when it's robbing us of our purchasing power, when our savings are under threat, which is evident as down here through the U.S. money supply. Now, money creation section, there's a couple subsections in here, but I want to focus on this U.S. M2 money supply now versus 2000. This website's made it really easy for us to see just how out of control this situation has gotten. Back in 2000, we can see money creation was just under $5 trillion. Today, we are looking at over $21 trillion. And I've explained this before, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that the more money, the more currency is really what this should say, the more currency that you create, well, the more that each individual unit of currency is going to be worth less. Hence inflation, hence the reason why your savings aren't going as far, your paychecks not buying you as much. It's because the money supply is out of control. And just as frightening and honestly not talked about enough is the currency and credit derivative section. Now, as a quick reminder, this is just pure made up financialization. That's what these numbers are. Derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction, according to Warren Buffett. And of course, they were those little things that ended up causing the entire 2008 great financial crisis. So, did we learn our lesson? Apparently not. Back in 2000, we can see that we had just under $100 trillion worth of currency and credit derivatives. And today that number is sitting at $632 trillion. Now, as a reference point, our entire US GDP for the year was $28 trillion. I mean, that is absolutely insane. These have the potential to take down our entire financial system. If things were to take a turn for the worst, it's the sheer scope and size of this that keeps me up at night. But enough about where we are today. Let's go ahead and take a look into the future and even the past. We have the option here to look into the past. So if we go to this time machine, we can click, let's say, on 2004. And while there won't be as much information because it wasn't capturing as much at the time, we can see right off the bat, things looked a whole lot better. I mean, this was only, 20 years ago, and we're seeing U.S. national debt was at $8 trillion. Just how far things have come. All right, but enough of that. Let's go to the future. So if we go to 2028 and 2028 budget showdown, we have a couple of different things here. So we see the projections, the estimates from the Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Budget Management. And those projections, right, are sitting at 41 and about 42 trillion. Now on the right here, we have this US debt clock at current rates, which is showing us that if nothing were to change, this is actually the projection that we could expect to see. And I don't know how you feel about it, but something tells me that the projections that the CBO and OBM are giving us probably aren't as accurate. The odds that somehow spending is going to slow, especially given the economic storm that we're entering, is less than likely. So let's look 4 years into the future at 2028 in more detail. So obviously here's that number, national debt jumped up again. But what I really want to call out is this largest budget item section. So interest on debt levels here, we have over $4 trillion. Again, that credit card bill just continuing to climb and climb and climb. Today it's at $1 trillion. In 4 years, we could expect to see this at almost $4 trillion. This is what unsustainable looks like. This is what defaulting on debt looks like. And again, before you say that will never happen, maybe the dollar doesn't have to go to zero, but what happens if it goes to 10 cents, to 5 cents, to 1 cent? I mean, maybe technically it's not nothing, but can your savings withstand that? I'm guessing the answer was no. So what can we do about it? Well, make sure that you're subscribed, because next week in the final chapter of this series, I'm going to go over the dollar to silver ratio and the dollar to gold ratio and what both reveal about how we can protect our financial future, and you won't want to miss it. So as always, thank you so much for being here. I'm Taylor Kenny with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.